If you eat Australian almonds, drink Riverland wine, or buy South Australian citrus from your local supermarket, the announcement made on the 15th of April this year is going to land in your shopping basket. South Australian irrigators along the River Murray have just been told the water they rely on to grow that food is being cut. The opening allocation for the 2026 to 27 water year has been set at 62%. A year ago, it was 100%. That is a 38 percentage point drop in a single year. Around 4,000 SA irrigators are now facing the first sub-100% opening allocation since 2020 to 21. The growers absorb the first hit. The cost flows through to households not long after. The announcement came from the South Australian Department for Environment and Water on the 15th of April, 2026. It applies to Class 3 high-security entitlement holders along the River Murray for the water year that starts on the 1st of July, 2026. In volume terms, the projection means South Australia is expected to receive around 1,246 gigaliters against its full Murray-Darling Basin Agreement entitlement of 1,850 gigaliters. That is roughly 604 gigaliters, less than a normal full entitlement year. And because the projected opening sits above 50%, irrigators do not qualify for private carryover from the 2025 to 26 year. Whatever water they had banked in their accounts cannot be rolled forward. The signs were there. In November 2025, the Riverland Winnigrop Growers Association and the Riverland Wine Industry Development Council wrote an open letter directly to Premier Peter Malinauskas. The chair of the Growers Association, Amanda Demas, and the chair of the Development Council, Jim Markias, told the Premier that the Riverland, South Australia's largest wine-producing area, was, in their words, breaking. They warned, Premier, time is not on our side. That was 5 months before the 62% figure was announced. The warnings were not just from industry. In February 2026, SA Minister for Primary Industries and Regional Development Claire Scriven said many parts of the state had received welcome rains, but the Murray-Mallee, Riverland, and Upper North had continued to suffer from drought. She said those areas were facing significant challenges for the coming season. The CEO of Grain Producers SA, Brad Perry, also flagged in October 2025 that while crops looked green in some regions, there was very little subsoil moisture, meaning hot, windy days could undo the season quickly. Now look at the figures behind the 62% decision. According to the SA Flow report dated the 17th of April, 2026, Hume Dam, one of the two big upstream storages, was at just 25% of capacity. Dartmouth Dam sat at around 65%, Menindee Lakes were at 34%, Lake Victoria, which feeds water down to the South Australian border, was at 47%. Across the entire Murray-Darling Basin, total water in storage by December 2025 was 13,788 gigaliters. That is 16% or 2,650 gigaliters, less than the same time the year before, according to ABARES. The Bureau of Meteorology has confirmed why. South Australia's area average rainfall for 2025 was 161 millimeters, 28% below the 1961 to 1990 average. It was the driest year in SA since 2019. Adelaide had its lowest metropolitan rainfall since 2006, the year before that. In its drought statement, covering the 24 months to March 2026, the Bureau identified severe and serious rainfall deficiencies across agricultural regions of southeastern South Australia. A small area east of the Murray Mouth had its lowest 24-month rainfall on record since 1900. The Bureau's 9th of April 2026 long-range forecast then said below-average rainfall is likely for most of Australia between May and July. Daytime temperatures are very likely to be above average, so the announcement was not a surprise. It was the system catching up to conditions on the ground. Now, who pays for this and how? Start with wine grapes, because that is where the water cuts hit hardest. The Riverland holds more than 20,000 hectares of vineyards. It produces around a third of Australia's annual wine grape crush in a normal year. Around 900 growers depend on Murray water to keep those vines alive. ABARES, in its March 2026 Agricultural Commodities Report, has already cut its forecast for Australia's wine grape production value by 31% for 2025 to 26, down to 657 million Australian dollars. ABARES has put plainly, Higher water prices across the southern Murray-Darling Basin and restricted allocations are limiting production. For 2026 to 27, ABARES expects the value to fall further 2%, with production sitting 34% below the 10-year average. The grower-level numbers are sharper. Riverland Shiraz used to fetch up to $700 a ton before Chinese tariffs in 2020. The 2024 vintage averaged $204 a ton. Early indicators for the 2026 vintage have come in between $80 and $120 a ton. The cost of producing a ton of grapes in the Riverland sits above $350. So growers are receiving, in some cases, less than a third of what it costs to grow the fruit. Now layer on this water cut. The cause and effect is direct. Less water means either smaller crops or higher water buying costs to make up the gap. Temporary water on the lower Murray traded at around $300 a megaliter in 2024 to 25, a 50% jump on the year before. With allocations down again, that price pressure is unlikely to ease. Vineyards get mothballed. Vines come out. Vine Health Australia has already recorded the Riverland's vineyard area shrinking by 206 hectares over 2 years. That trend is set to continue. Citrus and almonds tell a similar story, but with a twist. Over 90% of South Australia's citrus and almond production sits in the Riverland. The almond industry is in a different position to wine. The Almond Board of Australia is forecasting a 2026 crop of 166,892 tons, a 7% rise on 2025, and potentially a record. Australian almonds are also benefiting from US-China tariffs, which have shifted Chinese demand toward Australian product. But almonds are heavily water-dependent. ABARES has flagged that low water storage levels, high temporary water prices, and restricted allocations are likely to limit production across inland regions. A 38 percentage point cut to opening allocations puts pressure on margins in an industry that has just expanded plantings. For households watching this, the chain of consequence runs as follows. Less water means tighter production. Tighter production in major export crops like almonds and table grapes means lower export volumes or higher prices to maintain returns. Domestic supply of citrus, stone fruit, and vegetables tightens. Wholesale prices firm. Retail prices follow. Households in Adelaide, Melbourne, and Sydney that buy Riverland-grown produce will feel that at the checkout in the months ahead. Wine consumers may not see grocery price rises because the wine industry is already in oversupply, but the smaller growers, the ones who actually farm the grapes, face a third or fourth straight year of returns below cost. There is a second layer of pressure on Riverland producers that is not directly part of the water announcement, but that compounds it. As of March 2026, Vine Health Australia confirmed 58 active Queensland fruit fly outbreaks being managed by PIRSA across the Riverland. That is the highest concentration the region has seen since these outbreaks began in December 2020. The earliest reinstatement date for the Riverland pest-free area is the 25th of November, 2026. Until then, growers face restrictions on how their fruit and grapes can be moved out of the region. That hits market access just as water is being squeezed. There's also the algal bloom. Since the middle of March 2025, a harmful algal bloom has spread across South Australian coastal waters and into the Coorong North Lagoon at the mouth of the Murray. Peer-reviewed research published in October 2025 confirmed it had killed more than 550 marine species across an area of around 20,000 square kilometers. The Coorong and the Lower River Murray were listed as critically endangered under national environmental law on the 15th of January, 2026. Federal Environment Minister Murray said at the time that ecosystems in the region were threatened on a range of fronts, made worse by increasingly severe droughts and floods. So the pattern is stacking. Less water in the system. Lower opening allocations. Higher temporary water prices. Collapsed grape prices. Active fruit fly outbreaks. An algal bloom at the river mouth. Each of these on its own would be a major story. They are happening at the same time, in the same region, to the same growers. The financial assistance picture has been moving in parallel. Since November 2024, the South Australian government has rolled out a series of drought packages. First $18 million, then a further $55 million in April 2025, and another $24.5 million in December 2025. According to the state government, more than 3,800 farmers had accessed the on-farm drought infrastructure rebate scheme by the end of 2025. Tier 1 grants are capped at $5,000 and require a 25% farmer contribution. Tier 2 grants are capped at $20,000 at 50% of project cost. Rural business support has been managing more than 130 cases from grain, sheep, and cattle producers, and over 100 from the grape industry. Industry has its own responses underway. Murray Irrigation Limited launched a forward allocation product for the 2026 to 27 and 2027 to 28 seasons. According to Murray Irrigation, 88% of customers consulted supported it. The Murraylands and Riverland Landscape Board is rolling out a 3-year, $2 million climate-smart agriculture program funded by the Federal Department of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Forestry, with 5 demonstration sites, including an automated surface irrigation trial on a lower Murray dairy property. Some Riverland growers are diversifying. Lawana Fruits at Cooltong, a 40-year-old family stone fruit business, moved into almonds in 2025 to 26. Where things stand now. The 62% figure announced on the 15th of April is a worst-case projection from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. South Australia's allocation system is deliberately conservative. Allocations can only go up during a water year, never down. Most inflows historically arrive between July and October. The next scheduled update is the 15th of May, 2026. The water year itself starts on the 1st of July. There is still room for the figure to climb if winter and spring rain delivers. But the signal from the system is clear. The Bureau is forecasting below-average rainfall for the next 3 months. Storages are well down on this time last year. Growers are entering 2026 to 27 with no carryover, lower allocations, suppressed grape prices, active biosecurity restrictions, and a softer outlook for export commodity prices, according to ABARES. The water cut is not the whole story. Is the most visible piece of a wider squeeze on Riverland producers, on the towns that depend on them, and on the supply chains that move their fruit, almonds, citrus, and wine to households across Australia and offshore. The full impact will take the rest of the 2026 to 27 water year to play out. For the people at home, the cost shows up at the supermarket, at the bottle shop, and on rural main streets that depend on a working irrigation economy. That is the practical bottom line of a 38-point cut. Subscribe.